Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. You ready? Okay. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Our presentation today is Foster Power, How to Start a Movement with, not for your audience. We do have a lot to cover, so we're just asking everyone to wait until the end for questions, or you can use the event app to ask your question, and we'll get to it at the end or afterwards. So first things first, we are all representatives of Bay Area Legal Services, which is a nonprofit law firm serving the Tampa Bay area. It's a civil legal aid organization also serving seniors, veterans, and disaster victims across the state of Florida with 3 legal aid helplines. I'm David Gray. I'm the business project manager at Bay Area Legal Services, but I'm also the co-founder and business advisor of Foster Power. Next to me is Roscoe Durica. He is the digital project manager at Bay Area Legal Services and also the co-founder and product lead of Foster Power. Last but not least is Taylor Sartor. She is the staff attorney of the L. David Shear Children's Law Center of Bay Area Legal Services. She is also the original she's the original creator, but also co-founder and program lead of Foster Power. Our project was funded by a 2021 TIG. Foster Power is a website and app providing kids in Florida's foster care system with information on their benefits, protections, and legal rights. But as you'll see by the end of our presentation, it's a lot more than that. So today we're going to go through how the project got started, the technology behind it, our design process, challenges, and some successes as well, and our plans for the future. The most important thing we're going to go over throughout the presentation is how we worked with our audience throughout the process. Taylor.
Should we play the video first?
So this is like a handbook on like your rights.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, where was this when I was coming up in foster care? Why y'all couldn't do this for us? We got a pamphlet. That's what we got, y'all, a pamphlet.
Look, they got the stuff you're supposed to know by age. Come on now.
I like how it's organized, though.
They can select their age to see what exactly pertains to them,
Yeah.
like get exactly to the point.
But if you have it right in front of your face, then it's easier to take it and run it.
I honestly wish we had this when we were growing up because it's going to make stuff so much easier.
How does that make you feel that future kids are gonna have this available?
A lot of people is lost as of this day and age. This right here is gonna help find them. They're gonna find themselves.
So I like to play the promo video before I give the background of Foster Power, just to get everyone excited about what Foster Power is. So I'm just going to give you kind of the history of where we are now and how this started. As you'll see on the screen, if you look to your left, the image there is actually a paper booklet. So when I was still a law student, I volunteered with foster youth, and I found myself becoming increasingly frustrated when they would have questions and I didn't have answers to immediately, such as things like, one was living in a group home, did they get an allowance? Another youth hadn't seen their siblings in years, and was that supposed to happen? One was turning 18 soon and wanted to know, what do I have to do to qualify to be in extended foster care? And I was just, learning how to become a lawyer at that time, and I was researching statutes, and I'm finding, wow, this is all over the place. Some of it's Chapter 39, some of it's administrative code, some of it's in a whole nother statute. There's got to be some kind of comprehensive guide somewhere that has all this information in one place. And I started researching, and there wasn't anything in Florida. I found in some other states there was some kind of information, but it was either so complicated that I wasn't even going to sit down and read it, or it was so simplified that it wasn't helpful. So that's where this idea just kind of came to me. Nothing exists, I'm going to create it. So I worked with a team of law students, and as a final project in law school, we all worked together with, I think it was over 300 hours of pro bono research, and put together this 66-page booklet that explained the rights that kids had in foster care. At the time, our title was quite long. I think it was Know Your Rights, an informational guide for teenagers in foster care. We got some funding to print some copies, and when I became an attorney for kids in foster care, I started to use it in my practice, and kids liked it. Adults in the child welfare system liked it, but what we found oftentimes was, this may come as a shocker to some, but kids lose things, right? Teenagers lose things. If you think of a teenager who has no placement, who's sitting in the office all the time, who barely can keep track of their clothing, they're definitely going to lose that. So feedback I would get over and over from youth and from adults who work with them was, wow, if we could just have this on their phones, that would be a lot better, that would be great. Especially when the law became outdated, we had to reprint, copies, everything became completely obsolete. We wanted to, do updates. All of that was hindered having the paper booklets. So at our firm, we, had that idea, and David really took a lot of the lead in trying to find how can we make this happen. So we applied for a TIG grant, and we received the TIG grant, and we were able to take that information, and at that point I had expanded the content, was working with some attorneys and law students from Stetson Law School and Greenberg Traurig Law Firm, and they added more information that I compiled into different sections, where we now had a whole section for youth who are turning 18. We added a section on education, a section on the court process, and we took all of that and put it into a website and app. And we're going to go into a lot more information on how we did that, what our challenges were, what our successes were, but that's really, the idea behind it is that we, it started with this paper guide, and we took that paper guide and we turned it into this website and app. And one other thing I want to touch on is that we also have a video series. So we have about 35 short form, sort of TikTok style videos. That promo video you saw was an on-set film day that we did. Those were all former foster youth. They were compensated for their time the same rate. I asked the video production company, what do actors get paid? Let's make sure that they get that same rate. And they came, and what they did was sort of fishbowl style. They would pick out a question, did you get an allowance when you were in foster care? And they would discuss the answer, yes, I did, no, I didn't, or I did, and I got it taken away all the time. And they flip it over, and then they would read information about the law. And most of the time they were shocked by the answers, and it was information that they didn't know. And the purpose of these videos is really to, some kids are gonna feel overwhelmed and not wanna read all this information. And also, foster care can be very isolating, and kids can feel very alone, and they can also very often not trust the people who are, the adults who are paid to be there. But they are going to trust information from someone who's been through it themselves. So it's also to build a sense of community. And all of those videos are on our social media and our app as well when you click on videos.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the development part of the app and the website. So I divided the next few minutes into the different phases so you can have better understanding of the process and the steps taken to make the foster power successful. The first phase was the ideation and the brainstorming, kind of creating like a foundation of the foster power. So as Taylor mentioned earlier, we had booklet, an idea, previously done market and user research, and to be successful we needed to be to have a little bit more clarity, what are we trying to build. So we started with brainstorming, flushing out the different ideas and features. Eventually we came up with following. It needed to be simple, easy to use, user-friendly, and it had to resonate with our targeted users. Plus, we also came up with, we call it a 3-step process, meaning once the user lands on the app, they should be able to find the information they're looking for within the 3 clicks ideally. It's important to mention that at the beginning we adopted the product-centric approach rather than the project-oriented one, recognizing we're building a product, we're not just managing the temporary project. The second phase was drafting a RFP, request for proposal, and finding the right vendor who's going to design and build the app and the website. This is when our previously steps were very important because we included them all in the RFP, our early designs, the features we're thinking of, examples we found, user stories, user research, everything to give a better understanding of what are we trying to develop here. None of them were a must. All of them were optional. We wanted only to be as clear as possible about our expectations. For the ones who don't know what the user story is, it's just a simple description of the feature from the perspective of the end user. And they're very important eventually when you're trying to build a product. Our third phase was selecting a right partner and a vendor who's going to build the app. And this is where our detailed RFP was very important as well, because some of the vendors were sending us just generic responses, so you could immediately see who actually read our proposal and who understand what we're trying to build. So once the vendor was selected before the contract was signed, the step was to work on the project's scope of work. That includes all the milestones that served as a roadmap for us as well. Some of the milestones we included were development of basic sitemap, low fidelity wireframes, developing a branding guide, then doing the high fidelity wireframes, MVP development, testing, and eventually deployment. Having an MVP included as one of the milestones is an important step in making the successful digital product. It gives us an early look and feel of the app and the website, and making sure we continuously testing and getting feedback on each of the milestones. And that covers the development slide. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the technology behind the Foster Power. The website was built using a WordPress, and the app was built using the AppPresser. For the ones that don't know, the AppPresser is a mobile app builder that integrates with the WordPress, allowing users to create iOS and Android apps using the WordPress content. We felt that was the right choice since those tools reduce the cost of the development because they require a lot less custom coding. They speed up the development. Low-code tools allow quicker development and deployment. Easy to use. They don't require high coding knowledge and makes them much more accessible to a wide range of people. Flexibility and customization. While offering simplicity, these tools provide enough flexibility and options to create unique and functional digital products. Scalability. Platforms like WordPress and AppPresser are scalable, and they can handle more traffic and content as the product grows. And last but not the least, community and support. Tools like WordPress have large communities and documentation, and making it easier to find support tutorials and the plugins to extend the functionality. And this covers the tech behind the Foster Power.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about designing with and not for your users. There are 3 main principles that I'm going to cover, and Roscoe kind of touched on these. we had some goals when we started this project, and a lot of people did not think what we were going to do was very feasible or that it would be successful. There was a lot of, wondering how this was going to turn out and if we could really get it done in the timeline that we set out for ourselves. So the first thing that I said we absolutely have to do, because I see this a lot in child welfare, is we have to create something kids actually want to use. We have to create something that they're gonna, actually wanna go on and look at the information. I have seen things come out, and I have seen people actually try to build apps and say, we actually forgot to talk to the youth to see if this is what they want. So that is a big no-no. You wanna know exactly what they want before you go and build it. And then the second part of that, which is particularly a challenge in Florida, I can't speak as much for other states, but because we have a privatized foster care system, getting information out all over the place is extremely challenging. So we could make the most amazing resource in the world, but if kids don't know how to access it, it is also useless. So we need to create something they want to use and something they actually have a way to find out about. We're going to talk a little bit more about later on about some of the steps we have done to accomplish that. And then the last part is knowing your audience. So something they want to use. How did we go about this? We did a lot of user testing. We worked with advocacy groups that have former foster youth from around the state who work on their own advocacy projects. They sometimes work on legislation, just different aspects of child welfare that they want to see changes in. So we were able to do user testing with them and find out from the very beginning, do you even want an app? What would that app look like? What kind of content would you want in it? And we were actually able to work with this advocacy group, Florida Youth Shine, and with their policy initiative committee, who worked on different projects and already had a mechanism for compensation through their organization, would actually reviewed content line by line for some of the sections and would provide feedback and say, you should add a tip here, or this doesn't make sense to me, so we could get that feedback and we could make those changes. So, that was a really important way to make sure that even content-wise, we were on track with what we wanted to do. So again, just getting feedback throughout that process, everything from the design, the content itself, the branding, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was knowing your audience. It's important to work with your audience throughout the process and also being very sensitive to the fact that we are working with a very vulnerable population. So for me, it was very important that when we were doing user testing and interacting with youth formerly in foster care, that I was the one doing it, not outsourcing it to an agency that isn't used to working with youth in care. Because I'm an attorney for kids in foster care, I, have experience with working with them and understanding that they have, trauma and, the emotional labor it may take to answer some of these questions. And sometimes they're gonna go off on, a whole tangent about something, horrible that happened to them, and you have to be there through, and support them through that so that this isn't a traumatizing experience. And also making sure that they are being compensated for their time, because we are all working when we're working with them, and absolutely, nobody who participated in this project that was in foster care themselves ever did that for free. We always made sure that they were, valued for their expertise and that they were compensated for that. And again, going back to knowing your audience, a lot of the content too, just having years of working with kids in foster care and doing trainings for kids in foster care on their rights and knowing where the gaps were. Here are a lot of kids get separated from their siblings and they don't even know that they have the right to see them. So I made sure that we arranged content in a way where we see the major gaps, we are focusing on that in the app. So I think when you are building something for a particular audience, you really need to have someone who knows that audience. Another part that we focused on too was making it accessible to this population. So kids in foster care, a lot of our developers, when we were trying to select who would build the app, we can only do it on an iPhone. Well, a lot of these kids have an Android, even though they make fun of me for having an Android, they have an Android. But they have an Android, and we absolutely need to have this on both, or we need to simplify the product if we need to simplify it, but we need to make sure that we're getting it out to as many kids as possible. The other thing that we made sure was included in the RFPs is that this was available without Wi-Fi. So you need to download it. You need to download it with Wi-Fi, but after that, you only need updates for Wi-Fi. You can even download the videos and save the videos and go back to them. And the reason for this, too, is a lot of kids have phones and they don't have cell phone service, or they have phones and their group home or their foster home, if one kid acts out, they cut off the Wi-Fi for the whole house. It's a very common practice. It's just what's done. So if they want to access this information, they can access it without Wi-Fi. So again, just having that direct knowledge of what kids in foster care go through and working with them was really vital in making sure that we're designing something that is useful for them. And then building the brand, I kind of touched on this, but again, involving youth in the process every step of the way. Youth chose the logo. Kids from a particular group home chose the name, Foster Power. We had some ideas that I don't even remember what they were at this point, but they did not like them at all. And we had a list of names. And again, it just goes to show, I think the kids are really going to like this. And it was a resounding, Foster Power won out just, extremely high compared to the other names on the list. And it's not just they picked a name. I saw kids' faces light up, and they would make statements like, yeah, I like this. And I'd say, well, why do you like the name Foster Power? Because, we have power, but people just like to forget that sometimes. Or it reminds me that we do have power and we have a voice. So, it was really important that it's a name that resonates with them. And the color scheme, the logo, again, every step of the way we would involve youth. We tried to be very thoughtful in the design of the characters, just making sure that everything is inclusive and something that they want to use.
Okay, so I'm going to mention a couple challenges, especially with communication with vendors and giving them constant feedback and clarity on the things they're working on. When you're working with the developers, you simply have to be extra detailed. For example, you can ask them, okay, build me a button here, and but they'll build a button, but that's probably not going to be the one you imagined. So you have to be very specific. What's the purpose, the color, the size, every single little detail. So that's one of the challenges most of the people have, and I feel like it's very important to mention it. So.
Some other challenges that we had, again, I mentioned, getting it out there. We could have the best resource in the world, but if kids don't know about it, it's useless. So that was a challenge before we even started. We knew that we would have a really big feat to accomplish of getting information out to the child welfare system, which is very fractured in Florida. So we really had to take multiple approaches and spend a lot of time really thinking about it. And I want to kind of give a little aside to how having a team with very diverse abilities was really helpful in this project as well. All of the things that Roscoe had explained about MVPs and RFPs and the entire technical aspect those were not things I knew when we started this project. I'm a lawyer. I don't know any of those things. I didn't know what app presser was. I don't know coding. And, but then on the flip side of that, I know the audience, I know the law, I know the child welfare community and how to reach, different members to get the word out. So we really took, again, a multi-prong approach in getting the word out, where it was a lot of, on the ground work on my part, and then digital marketing on Roscoe's part, and PR as well on David's part. So we'll talk a little bit more on that as well. And I think the only other challenge I wanted to mention too is just timelines. It's definitely very difficult, to accomplish. We had really, really lofty goals, and we were kind of told from the very beginning, okay, don't be sad, but you're not going to meet all of these. And then we had some delays. It took us a little bit to find and hire Roscoe. He was 100% worth the wait, and we really needed him when he came in. But it put us back about 8 months. But we were still able to, again, with the communication with vendors, really understanding what we needed and the timelines, we were able to push everything out and accomplish everything that we said we would by the end of the grant period, including meeting all of our milestones. But again, I think, throughout it, there was always delays. So that was a challenge too, even though it did work out in the end.
So we touched on this a little bit, but marketing is one of the most important aspects of the product launch. So if you're ever having a new program, we spent all this time, money working with the kids, so the last thing we wanted to do was to not get the product in their hands, right? Traditionally, it's a very hard group to reach. We can't just go knock on the doors at the foster groups or at the foster homes or anything like that. But we kept it relatively pretty simple, and I think anyone here can sort of follow what we did. So it was really building on general awareness, digital marketing, which Roscoe will talk more about, and traditional boots on the ground outreach, which Taylor talked about a little bit. So first things first, we really just shared it with our networks. Anyone we thought we would care, or even if they didn't care, they were going to hear about it anyway. So our coworkers, other legal aid attorneys, child welfare professionals, those in legal tech, literally however we could, emails, text, social media. If any of you were on the LSN TAP listserv, you probably saw this. After that, we pitched a lot. So again, we started with those who we knew. So we developed a press release, and then the real part of that was our media pitch. So we started with those who we knew, so our contacts at local news channels through our development team, the Stetson Law News, we knew people over there, and at Florida Bar News. So again, we started with the low-hanging fruit, who's easiest. After that, just for time and everything, we don't have a lot of time to go into it, but we did a lot of research. So who's writing about kids in foster care throughout the state, throughout the country, people who might care about what we built and would share it with their audience, right? So it often took 2 to 3 times to get people to even respond to you. That's probably like the most soul-crushing part. So don't get discouraged if you're like constantly following up with people and not hearing back. It usually does take a while. So just, for us to brag a little bit, the initial PR push was in May and June of last year. So we were able to get features in NPR, The Skim, Law Sites, the ABA Journal, Talk Justice Podcast, and several Florida news channels as well. The other thing I want to say as well, Taylor always made herself available for interviews. I don't know that she likes me saying it, but she is the expert. She is one of the top people in Florida who knows about the law and the way that it affects children in foster care. So she was also part of our pitch. So all of you at your organizations, if you have a new product, project, program, you're pitching those, but of course you need to remember that you're pitching your experts as well. I think that makes for a more well-rounded pitch. And besides that, just make it easy, as easy as possible for the people you're pitching.
And I can talk too about with marketing on the kind of boots on the ground. So I did do a lot of trainings, and I have the same issue, of course, with training case management organizations that serve youth in foster care. Sometimes I'd have to email 5 or 6 times and CC someone else that would make sure that, if that director wasn't seeing it, they would respond, and because they're just very busy and overwhelmed. So I scheduled trainings with case managers, current and former foster youth themselves, judges, magistrates, attorneys across the state. We had to track everything, of course, for grant purposes, so I trained hundreds, I think about 400 or so people across the state of Florida, and again, just getting the word out there on the ground, going to conferences, handing out QR codes, and we really, determined that it is impossible to reach youth all over the state on our own, because I can't go to every group home that exists in Florida. But working with the case managers, getting those people who are having contact with the youth, the case managers have to see the youth every 30 days. The judges are seeing them in court. So that's another way that we really work to market and get the word out about Foster Power.
And I will mention something about okay. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of the video content. We mentioned earlier that we have a video series. So short videos content is important in today's digital landscape for promoting the product, engaging with the users, getting feedback, and building strong brand identity. Increasing visibility and building awareness are highly engaging and shareable, and can effectively capture attention and spread awareness about the Foster Power. Community building with the engaging content can stimulate discussions and increase user involvement. They can be used in obviously marketing and promotion to demonstrate the product's features, benefits, updates, making them an excellent asset for promotional activities. And last but not least, building trust and credibility. Regularly posting valuable content on social media can establish the brand as credible and trustworthy. So here on the slide over here, those are the results of the marketing campaign we did about 4 months after deployment. An online marketing campaign is crucial in reaching and engaging with users. Since we already had videos developed, we didn't need to make the new content that would be used in campaign. We just simply used the videos which we already had, cut them, make them shorter, edit, picked a few different topics, and did the A/B testing for each of the topics. After a few days, we were able to see which videos are performing the best, and moving forward, those are the ones that are used in campaign, and those are the results of that campaign. The impressions are for each platform, how many times the ad/video was seen. The clicks are how many times the user clicked on the ad, and the installs are obviously how many times the app was downloaded, and the money spent on each of the platforms. So early in the campaign, we ditched the Meta. It was too expensive, and not a lot of our users using Meta platforms, technically the Facebook. Most of them were on the TikTok. And as you can see, the Google probably had the largest visibility and is also probably the cheapest platform to run. And the interesting thing about the TikTok is we were able to target Florida and kids that are 24 or younger. So all of those downloads, we know technically who download the app. With the Google, we were able to target Florida, but not so much the 24 or younger. So we're assuming majority is the Foster youth, but again. And on the bottom is the total number of the impressions, clicks, installs, and money we spent on that campaign, which turns out a little bit over $3 per download. Measuring the success. I'm going to touch short. So far, since we launched in May, we have about 3,500 downloads, combined the iOS and Android platform. The website was visited more than 9,400 times, and video views were total combined across all the social media, more than 100,000 times they were viewed.
So for impact and reach, I'm going to discuss just kind of some anecdotal successes. We have had a lot of positive feedback from, for instance, I may get a phone call from someone who was working in child welfare and went to a foster home, and there were 5 girls that lived there, and I don't know them, and I didn't tell them about the app, and they all had the app on their phones and actually utilized it to fill out a request to access some money that they're entitled to in their master trust account. So that was a really exciting story. A judge had told me, I trained all of the judges and magistrates in our circuit, and one of the judges keeps the app on his bench. While he's on the bench, he has it up all day, and joked that people think he's on TikTok, but he's really on the Foster Power app, and that he had learned some acronyms. He had no idea what, just one of those things, I don't know what APLA stands for. I know it's something about kids aging out of foster care, but I never knew what it was, and he was able to see another plan, permanent living arrangement, is what it stands for, through the app. We've had a lot of support from our head dependency judge, who helped arrange the trainings, and she did kind of actually tell me when the app launched that she was very surprised it happened, because things move very slowly in child welfare, and she assumed when I told her about the idea that it'd take about 10 years and she'd be long gone. So she was surprised to see that it was launched and came out, even though I felt like it took forever. In the child welfare world, we actually were able to pull it together at a rather quick pace. And another aspect of Foster Power, too, that I want to touch on is when I do trainings to youth and adults, the youth sometimes a lot of times they get frustrated because they read the information and they say, well, now what? Now I have the information, but nobody listens to me. I'm going to say this, and it's not going to change. My case manager's not going to listen. And, I encourage them, you have a little bit more than you did before because you have an app. We do cite to the law on every page because that was a non-negotiable for me, that we were going to have this information and cite to it, because, again, it creates more credibility that a judge is more likely, an attorney is more likely to actually utilize the information if they can go and look up, okay, that's the statute, let me actually verify this before I say it as fact. And kids too, when I do trainings, sometimes before I had the app, the kids would actually write down a statute. Oh, this says I'm supposed to be getting an allowance. I haven't gotten an allowance in 3 years, and they would write down that statute. So I encourage them to use their voice and, to not give up, and that they have this as a resource. But when I do this training to adults, within the child welfare system, I encourage them, I remind them this is not information that is controversial. This is not information that's debatable. It's all in the law, and we're all just way too busy to ever be able to just look all this up, because it would take, it took years and years to put it together. It would take a long time to look it up. So we're not, rebuilding, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just making sure that this wheel turns. So, when you see something that's not happening that it should be, and you might get frustrated because it comes from the case manager all the way up to the judges. When I do the training with judges, they get frustrated of, I never see this happen, I never see that happen. Well, and I remind them we have to keep pushing, and the more that we are able to bring light to this is supposed to be happening, and the more it's talked about, we can create that systemic change. So that's, a big part of that too, is we want to have better lives and futures for kids in foster care by ensuring that their benefits, protections, and legal rights are, information that they know, and that their rights, are being protected, and that they have access to their benefits. So that's, something that we have seen, and I'll show a quick example of that at the very end.
All right, so what's next? So Foster Power itself is really just a pilot project. We're just getting started. So we've proved the need, and we've proved that children, judges, attorneys, and child welfare professionals want this product. So we do have plans to expand throughout Florida, provide more training throughout Florida, and just get wider adoption in the child welfare system in Florida. Later this year, we do have plans to add an immigration section so that unaccompanied minors in the state have access to information on their rights as well while they're in the system. No timeline yet, but we are planning to add a human trafficking section and specific training on that as well. We're also exploring replicating it in other states. We're in very early discussions with one state now, but if any of this sounds of interest to you, feel free to get in touch with us. And then the last slide. So we just want to stress the importance, and we don't have a lot of time to get into the details here either, but we just want to stress the importance of having extremely supportive partners and stakeholders to help push your project along. Like Taylor said, we've experienced plenty of delays, but we feel we had the right people in place, including LSC, to kind of work with us along the way. So this last slide is just a thank you to some of those involved.
So our last topic today is a little activity. I always do in my trainings. So I'm going to ask you all to scan the QR code and download the app. And I will say, I see most of you putting your phones up, but there is a prize for the activity. It's a bit of a competition, so if you're not feeling like downloading it, and now you are, go ahead and do so. Usually people like the prize. Okay. Does anyone still need the QR code? Okay. So as you're downloading it, this is just a screenshot so you can see kind of the app. You'll see it shortly when you have it on your phone, but this is the setup and our graphics, and again, you'll see all that. Okay, you can switch. So I'm gonna put a prompt, Rasmussen put a prompt on the screen, and you're gonna find the answer in the app. Don't do it yet. So I will give a little bit of a hint because I'm not dealing with a child welfare audience, and usually I don't help them out at all. But if we're talking about anything with teenagers, you're going to probably want to look around something called independent living. So raise your hand when you find the answer to the question, because I'm going to really look closely to see who raises their hand first. And if you get the right answer, you get the prize. But if the answer is wrong, I'm going to pass on you to someone else because I want to make sure that we get the real winner. Okay, we'll give it a second. Sometimes it takes a little bit when I've noticed in big groups when everyone's trying to download at once. I don't know if it's a Wi-Fi issue or what. Give it a minute. You can also go to the website if it's really not downloading on your phone and you really want to participate. It's all the same info. Okay, we're going to go to the next slide. So true or false, youth in foster care should be given a copy of their credit report starting at age 14. Oh, wow. Who is the... All the way back, yes, you, who just looked behind you. Correct. So you will get a prize. So I want to also say a little bit of a story about this one. When I do these trainings, I have a bunch of questions usually for people that work in child welfare, and it sparks a lot of discussion and different, things they didn't know or something they're frustrated about. For instance, a very popular question that always sparks a lot of conversation is, I do scenarios, a kid is trying to get enrolled in school, and the school says we need to wait for their records, and it's a child in foster care, and now it's weeks and weeks, and the kid's not in school, and can this happen? And the answer is no. It does happen, but it's illegal. So under Every Student Succeeds Act, federal law, kids in foster care must be enrolled in school immediately, regardless of if the school has all of their records or not. But it is something that happens a lot in Florida in my experience. So, you know, case managers usually see this and they get really frustrated and they say, I see this all the time. So I give them tips and I say, you've got to go and you've got to talk to the registrar directly. And usually it's usually a situation they just don't know because they may not have a lot of kids in foster care there, or they don't have someone telling them this is the you know, answer, you know, this is what's supposed to happen. And I've done trainings, and I've done another training where someone was at the previous training and they said, I had this, you did this question last time and I had it come up and I told the school the kid had to be enrolled right away and they enrolled them, and like, that's great. So with this question in particular, people usually, when I did this with judges, they laughed when they saw this because they said, we've never seen this happen. So I understand that, but it is a law, so, you know, we're bringing more attention to it and we're gonna get there. And 3 to 4 trainings later, I said, you know, to the group, now I know you don't see this happen, but this is the law. And somebody from the lead foster care agency raised their hand and said, hi, excuse me, my name is so-and-so, and I want to let you know, I'm pulling the credit reports now. They assigned that to me. So now in our county, we are pulling the credit reports starting at age 14 for every child in foster care. So again, just an example of something that kind of was missed because people aren't really talking about it, and then it becomes a more of a hot button issue, and that has, you know, since been resolved. So that's our activity. I will give you your prize. David, do you want to hand it out? Go down. Yeah, you can show it.
Oh, it is Q&A, okay.
So this is our, oh, well, you could come and get it. Whatever, you're already halfway there. So. So now we have a little bit of time if anyone has any questions. Oh, okay. So I will say the immediate story that comes to mind is actually even just before the app, when I have done trainings just on this information. I find this one to be really funny, I just have to be honest. I gave a training about, you know, kids' rights, and I said, you have the right to have an allowance. Well, the way that it works is that the group homes are given the monthly board rate, and they are required to give the allowance to the kids. So a bunch of these kids were in this group home and went home and were like, hey, I'm never getting an allowance, this isn't right. And then the group home called the foster care agency and complained and was like, they're being sold, and they called me and they're like, you did a training and said this? And I'm like, yeah, what's the problem? The group home just admitted they're not following the law. I don't even understand. So I will say yes, and I think also truthfully in the beginning, when I was a brand new attorney and people knew I was a brand new attorney and I was coming and giving trainings to kids and they were leaving saying, I'm not taking my medication anymore, you know, and things, you know, that caused more pushback. But I think we've been really intentional about, that's why messaging is really important too. We really have not gotten much pushback from the app since we've gotten to this point, because I've seen where rifts have been caused, and again, just being very intentional about the messaging that none of this information is, you know, anything that's not based in the law. It's all cited there. We're not just talking about rights, because rights is a smaller category, unfortunately. We're also talking about anything the law says that's supposed to happen is something, as a lawyer, I'm gonna go into court and argue. So to me, that's a protection the child should have, and that's a, you know, a benefit they should be getting as well. So. Do you want to talk about
we did have quite a good sized budget, actually. It was around, I want to say, $350,000. A lot of that went towards salaries, but we had, you know, about $120,000 was contracts. So the website and app development, that was about $40,000 or $45,000, and then the videos was another $45,000, and there's some other smaller things, but you know, like we've kind of shared, you know, the videos is probably one of the best things we did, just because it shows the experience of the youth. You know, it's not just us telling them about their rights, it's other kids telling them about their experience. And as Roscoe said, the nice thing is all those videos we had, you know, over 35, they're about a minute long. Now we have those are ours. We can cut those up. We can use them for the next 5 to 10 years if we wanted to. So I would say we did pretty well with our budget. We didn't have a lot of challenges there. So sorry, sorry if you're probably looking for some advice. But as of right now, we are looking for funding. So since our TIG is over, we are actively looking for funding sources. So I'd say that's kind of our biggest challenge now is what's next.
So for language, we are definitely making a priority for the immigration section to have multiple languages, including Spanish. As far as being able to translate the entire app, we've talked about that as well. We were trying to do so many things at once with our first release. There were a lot of things that we really wanted to do that we had to say we're gonna table, but certainly is something that we have our eye on and hope to do in the future. And for, I think the second question was downloads and usage. Did you want to answer that?
Yeah, as of now, we have over 3,500 downloads, and for the website, we have over 9,400 visits on the website. And I think we mentioned 100,000 plus video views.
So that is something that, you know, I've kind of always had that challenge because I've had the book as well, and we were trying to update that, and that was certainly more complicated. For small updates to the law, I can go on and change it pretty quickly when there's something minor that needs to be updated. But, you know, our goal is to be able to, once a year for anything that's a major update, you know, to add into the app. And again, you know, we've kind of had the philosophy and mission that we want to always continue some form of user testing. Again, that is one of the challenges, again, is working with a vulnerable population that's very disenfranchised and can honestly, you know, really constantly be in crisis too when we're working with over 18, you know, that have aged out of foster care, and sometimes they're, you know, juggling a lot, and then we want to ask them to user test on top of it. Even with compensation, it can be, it's a challenge, and it's, you know, sometimes just more work just finding them and being able to give them the opportunity to review it than them just reviewing it. But it is something that we, again, just have that philosophy of continuing, you know, as we receive grant funding, that we're just going to continue to do and continue to receive feedback. I would say no. There's not anything that I can really think of specifically that somebody has said. And again, I think that goes back to the fact that you have a problem with that. Well, it's the law. You know, that's the thing. We're not going to hide what the law is from youth when this is information that, you know, they are supposed to receive about what their rights are if they are part of the LGBTQ+ population. So we haven't really gotten any negativity regarding that.
How much of your social media growth was organic versus using ad dollars?
Social media was almost everything organic.
So the first question, the target population, Off the top of my head, I don't know that I have the exact, there's about 30,000-ish kids involved within the child welfare system, period. That's relative, non-relative care as well in Florida. There is a smaller population that is in licensed care, and then again, an even smaller population. It's in the thousands, less than 10,000. And I don't know if we're talking about, 18 to 24 would be obviously an even smaller number. And I don't have that number just off the top of my head, so I don't want to say something that is incorrect. But what I will say is that we do have a problem in Florida. A recent report had come out that said less than 1/3 of youth who have aged out of foster care are accessing benefits that they're entitled to, which would be extended foster care, a program called post-secondary education support services, or aftercare. So, only about 1/3 or slightly less than are accessing that. So that is something that we, want to be able to improve, and we hope that Foster Power, just even giving them access to the information about what their benefits are, may have an impact on that. We have from other states, just sort of through social media. There have been a few people, I think, on Instagram and TikTok who've done, I think they're called stitches, or, reviews of kind of what it was, and they were very positive about it. We also needed to be, it also made us realize too, we had to go back and make sure, we didn't really realize how much everything would get out so fast, and then we had to kind of go back and really make sure that everything said Florida, because some people were kind of, oh, this is great, and they're in other states, and we're trying to comment back, and like, no, this is just Florida, and they're like, but this could be useful for other people, and I'm like, generally, yes, but these laws are specific to Florida, so we don't want to lead people the wrong way. But yeah, the feedback that we had from, people posting and things was very positive, that what we hear a lot is, I wish that I had this. I didn't know this, and that looking through this, and this is something I wish that I had. And another thing that we hear a lot, and I'll hear from my clients too, will tell me, when they download it, they feel that it's very easy to use and navigate.
How do you account for literacy challenges in content design? Do the videos duplicate all the written information?
So yes, so the videos, not all the written information, we'd have to have way too many videos, but what I did really try to do was take a lot of time to go through like each section. What are the most hot button issues that I hear from my clients the most? Where do I see kids' rights being violated the most, and what matters the most to youth when I, come into contact with them and learn these things? So the videos, that's how I tried to format that. As far as literacy, we did work a little bit with a plain language expert to kind of just gauge where we were at. And I will say that's something that just me personally, I spend a lot of time taking information, because I get a lot of the information from law students and attorneys. Everybody writes differently, and the attorneys are worse than the law students when they put stuff together, because it's, in legal speak, not how people can understand it. And, honestly, we use a plain language person just to kind of help make sure that we were on track, but I take a lot of ownership on that content, just because I also want to make sure that there is a balance between simplifying too much, which I've seen where we're changing the meaning of the law, or we're not giving kids all the information. Some of the user testing feedback we had was, don't take stuff out because you think I won't understand it. Like, put everything in there. I still want to see everything. Don't remove things because you think it's too difficult for me. So I really just spend a lot of time editing and trying to create everything in the same voice. So I just, before being a lawyer, I have an editing background and an English background. So it's just something that I kind of take on the project of really making sure that it's simplified enough and it's never really simplified enough for me. I always want to go back and keep editing, and that's what kind of can delay things towards the ends too. I would be editing for hours and hours at night, but that is, you know, a very, very important aspect, is making sure that it is easy enough to understand.
How did you create the video content on the app?
How did we?
The video content on the app.
So we had a film crew come out, and we had former foster youth, kind of just got them from a variety of places that were interested in coming, and help them get people who needed help with transportation. We got, you know, help them get there. And then I worked with the video production, with the production lead, I think was her role, and they kind of told us, based on our vision, they helped guide us and say, we think that you should do what's called fishbowl style. So they gave us some examples where, again, kids would pick out of a bowl. And what I would do is I would preface them, like, again, because you want to be sensitive to the population you're working with, in case there was something they pulled out they didn't want to answer. I'd give them the topic, like, are you okay talking about this, 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 and then I'd put them in there, and they'd pull that out, and they would read the information, and then, you know, talk about their own experiences, flip it over, and then give information about the law. And we just, you know, we filmed it with them. Again, some of it was emotional. We had, you know, one former foster youth come in towards the end of filming for another group, and the other group happened to have a really good experience in foster care, which truthfully isn't always that common. And it was a little bit triggering for her, because she heard them, and she's like, you know, said to me, and I don't know her, you know, but she said to me, my experience was horrible. I don't know what you want me to talk about. Like, it's not going to be good. And I had to really be there for her and help process with her. Like, you know, I get it. That was their experience, and your experience, unfortunately, is a lot more common. And, you know, you just have to really, like, make sure that they're comfortable throughout, because most were really nervous first walking in, and, you know, just being there for them throughout the filming and making sure that everything goes at their pace and that they feel like they're in control.
Would you describe the specific processes for engaging foster kids in the development of a sex kind of going on here?
Yeah, so again, we did a lot of it via Zoom with Florida Youth Shine, an advocacy group, where we would, they'd get a chance to look at the material, or we would have different subjects. Like, some of it was just basic understanding of, you know, how do you want to receive information about your rights, your benefits, protections, and we would, you know, get that feedback from them. We would give them, you know, those who were interested would review the Word documents of the content and give that back for picking the name. You know, we went to a local group home, one that I've had many clients at for many years, and they picked out the name. So just working with different organizations that have connections with foster youth or former foster youth, and, you know, interacting with them and working one-on-one with those youth to get that feedback. All right.
All right.
I think we're out of
Thank you.
time. So thank you so much.